Social Development Minister Carmel Sepuloni says she and her ministry are working as quickly as they can on welfare reform, and it's easier to make recommendations than to implement them. The government is pointing to new figures on its $5.5 billion families package as proof it's on track to lift up to 74,000 children out of poverty by 2021. But the government's facing criticism that it's not doing enough, fast enough to raise people out of poverty. Here's Christchurch City Missioner Matthew Mark.
Really is just people struggling to make ends meet. And so we're literally seeing people having to make the choice between paying the power, paying the rent, putting food on the table, or all manner of different things that would be your normal day-to-day expenses.
Professor Ines Asher, who was on the government's own welfare expert advisory group, says not nearly enough is being done.
A lot of help has reached a lot of people, but in a small way. We're just talking about people needing a much larger lift up to stop the struggling and the sickness and the distress and the hunger and so on. So I think there just needs to be a much bigger lift.
So I asked the Minister, Carmel Sepuloni, what this first review or stock take of the families package actually shows.
It tells us that New Zealand families have really benefited from the families package. It gives us a clear indication of the number of New Zealanders that have received or accessed parts of the families package, and it tells us too that our numbers with respect to how many New Zealanders we were hoping to impact were really spot on.
The thing is, in the report itself, there's a disclaimer on about page 6, I think, and it says that the data does not allow us to track what difference the package itself made to payments received, family incomes, child poverty, children's outcomes, people's employment or other measures of well-being. So it really doesn't tell us much at this point, does it?
Well, we do know that over 1 million New Zealanders benefited from the winter energy payment. We do know that in households without children or uncoupled people, that they got an additional $400 a year, $700 for couples or people with children. We do know, with respect to the Best Start payment, that 36,000 New Zealanders accessed that and so had an additional $60 per week with a new baby in the household. And the figures go on. And so those are really positive results. Our intention was always to put more money in the pockets of low to middle income New Zealanders, and we've achieved that.
Are you, though, putting that money into the pockets of those people? Because the criticism is that you've targeted the likes of a accommodation supplement and also the winter energy payment, which you mentioned there, and those payments go to electricity companies and landlords.
They support people to keep their houses warm in the winter, Lisa, and it's probably one of the aspects of the families package that I get the most positive feedback about. I'd heard too many stories, even in my own electorate, of senior citizens not wanting to turn the heater on because of the cost, and so this has made a real difference in their lives.
And I suppose a lot of people will appreciate that, but the question is whether you could be and should be doing more. I want to take a look at some other measures that are included in MSD's annual report. There are 5 performance indicators in that report. Again, that's on page 30 of the report. Among them, the number of years people spend on a benefit and the wait time for people needing social houses. At worst, your ministry is failing to meet its targets on those points, and at best it's just treading water. That must be pretty disappointing for you, is it?
Well, Lisa, I don't have responsibility for building the houses, but our government's working really hard with that respect. We stopped the sell-off of state houses as soon as we got in, and as has been reported on numerous occasions, we're ahead of target to build the 6,400 state houses that we committed to. So there is a lot of ground to make up, and we've always been very upfront about that. There is more to do, but we have to take stock, and actually I will celebrate the fact that the families package has touched the lives of so many New Zealanders without ever saying that there's not more to do. We all acknowledge that that's the case.
Your own expert advisory group, members of that group don't think that you are going fast enough or being brave enough in your reforms. So why the delays?
Oh, look, they also acknowledge in the report that the one thing they didn't have access to when they were pulling together that really comprehensive report around welfare was they didn't have access to the modelling. Now, I'm the minister in charge of actually then working out the detail behind the scenes, Lisa. And I think lots of people do understand that it's a lot harder to do that than it is to actually make the recommendations. All due respect to the people that were on that advisory group, though.
So are their expectations too high?
I fully expected them and other groups to continue to push us along as a government and to hold us accountable. And I'm working as quickly as I can. I've got my ministry working as quickly as they can. It's just doesn't necessarily meet the expectations of some, and that's okay.
So of the 120 recommendations that were made in that report, you have, identified 3? From memory that you're going to go forward with?
No, I do need to correct that, Lisa, because actually some of the other recommendations are being responded to too. And as I said, I think previously in an interview with you, many of them are not a tick box exercise. They require ongoing work. Many of them have different elements to them. And so there's more going on in this space. If you think about what we're doing around building public housing, that responds to the report. If you think about the changes that have been made with respect to loan sharks, the credit reforms that Chris Foy's led, that responds to some of what was recommended.
But we're talking
in there as well.
specifically about the recommendations in the report and core benefits.
I'm talking specifically about the recommendations as well, Lisa.
Let's look at some of the main ones.
It's an all-of-government approach that had to be taken to this.
Increase in core benefits, when will that happen?
Income adequacy has been a focus for us from the start. You know, the families package shows that we're serious about addressing income adequacy.
So no commitment to increasing core benefits?
To middle income homes. In terms of what else we're going to do in this space to address income adequacy, Lisa, I'm not announcing anything today. There is work going on to address income adequacy, and we will continue to do that.
And that's the problem that some of your critics have. They say that's not very transparent. They don't know what you're doing or when it will happen, and there is no commitment from you publicly to increase core benefits, even though it's one of the core recommendations of your own welfare advisory group. So what work are you doing behind the scenes in terms of an increase to core benefits?
Well, other than the families package, Lisa, we do have to remember that the 3 announcements that were made at Budget 2019 also go some way to addressing income adequacy, lifting abatement thresholds, indexing benefits to wages, and also repealing Section 192 so that we no longer have that sanction that punishes basically sole parents with children. So those 3 things put more money into the pockets of the New Zealanders that we're talking about. As I've said before, is there more to do? Absolutely.
In terms of that, though, hardship grants are up 66% from September 2018 to September 2019. So that is during the time that you have introduced your families package. Doesn't that show you, isn't it proof that benefits are not covering basic costs?
There's 2 things that I want to refer to with respect to that, Lisa. One is that I made very clear to MSD that we will make sure that people get access to what they are entitled to, and I think that they've been successful in doing that. Secondly, we know that special needs grants are up in places where there is a housing demand, issues with affordability with respect to housing, in particular Auckland, Bay of Plenty, 2 really good examples of that. And so we've always known that, yes, there needs to be changes to the welfare system, but alongside that, we have to have the comprehensive housing program and a range of other things. And so there's a lot happening in this space, Lisa, and it's not just in MSD. The MSD clients, the people that walk through our door, need us to be taking an all-of-government approach to their well-being and their lives, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Could you just clarify for me, what do you actually think a benefit should cover? What do you think it should cover?
Oh, look, I expect that our welfare system will be fair, will be accessible, will uphold people's dignity, and, income adequacy is,
so
of course, a consideration.
In practical terms, what does that mean? Should it allow them to put adequate food on the table, roof over their head, meet their health needs, participate in society, and do so with dignity? Do you agree with all of those things?
That has to be our objective. And Lisa, can I say,
so does the current level of benefit allow people to achieve that list that we've just said?
In terms of what is provided through the welfare system, if I thought that it already did, then I wouldn't have included income adequacy in the terms of reference with respect to the work that the Welfare Expert Advisory Group has undertaken.
Okay, so can you remind me what the surplus is at the moment?
The surplus at the last budget was, and keeping in mind this is not my money, I think it was $7.5 billion.
Yeah, so can you explain to people why they have to wait for these reforms to happen when you have such a significant surplus?
Oh, you know, I wish that changes were so easy to implement, Lisa. I will say, even in some instances with the recommendations that are in the report, and this is not an excuse, this is the absolute truth, we don't even have the technology in place to be able to roll them out. One that I've discussed, actually it's in the Cabinet paper, that I wanted to look at is even, you know, things like child support pass on. We don't actually have the technology through our systems to even be able to do it. So I know that people on the outside say, just do something. But the reality is that it doesn't happen that quickly, and sometimes it comes down to technology and a range of other things.
Okay, so Child Action Poverty is calling for a pre-Christmas package of welfare changes. They want this urgently. Are you going to do that?
Look, I respect the role that they have in advocating for children, and I want to return to the issue that I raised earlier.
So no, just on the package, are you going to do anything before Christmas?
You can't actually just implement immediate changes in the way that CPAG would like us to, and you can't implement changes that haven't been taken into consideration with respect to the budget. Most New Zealanders also expect us to be transparent about how and when we're going to spend money, and they expect to see that through the budget process. And so, you know, unfortunately, what CPAG is asking for is something that is not possible.
And that was the Social Development Minister Carmel Sepuloni there.